Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm back in the kitchen because my husband is grading papers for his school. This is like the final stretch for him before retiring, so this is very nice. But at any rate, I'm in the kitchen, so I'm trying to be as quiet as I can so that he can concentrate in there. So if the sound sounds a little bit too quiet, you'll have to turn it up a little bit because I don't want to disturb him. Okay? So before I get started, I'm going to pull a card. And I have to tell you, I have been having some very vivid dreams as of late. And last night jarred me to my core. And the reason is because the reality of it is probably far more intense than anything else. So I had a nice long chat with Metatron about it this morning, and I feel a little bit better, but still very, very jarred by it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about the dream before I do the meditation so that you have an idea of what's going on. I had a dream that I was traveling with my husband. We were in a car and we were driving along the border between Canada and the U.S. And we ended up going down a road that would lead us straight to the border control between Canada and the U.S. And we got stopped. And they weren't interested in my husband. They were interested in me. And it was very, very nerve-wracking, if you will. They found a knife in our car in the dream. There was like a knife in our car. And they saw it as a threat, even though it was actually just a kitchen knife that you use to like smear butter onto bread, basically. I mean, it wasn't like what Crocodile Dundee carried in that movie in the 80s. This was a very mild thing. But they stopped us and they wanted to interrogate me. And I had no idea as to why. And I woke up thinking, maybe it's my social media. Maybe, freedom of speech isn't all it's cracked up to be, even though I'm not very critical of people. And I don't really, I say a lot of things that are like very mild, very lame in comparison to what some other people have said. So this was very, very nerve-wracking. And it was a very, very Halloween kind of dream. And so I woke up kind of in a cold sweat because I was like, oh my God, this felt so real. It felt like I was actually there and that this was actually happening. And the message that I got from it was this was a threat to me or a danger to me, not necessarily to my husband, who's German citizen. So whatever that was, it was very, very it was very nerve-wracking, and I was like very scared. And so I woke up with that in my frame of mind. And instead of going into the other dreams that I had, because in the last few days I've remembered several of the dreams, instead of going into that one, I'm going to go into this one. So because I really needed to do this, because I feel that it is important for me to do it. I think the message in it is far too important than to just go into some flight of fantasy. So this is where my conscience is taking me. So I'm going to pull a card about that dream and see what card I get. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like Ten of Swords, or Death card, or Tower, or something like that. But we'll see. So, it's the Four of Swords, which is parallels pretty good with the dream. This guy's laying in wait, his hands near his sword handle so that he can reach for it if he needs to. Three swords above him are, they kind of signify this notion of not being able to sleep or not being able to rest. There's a lot of anxiety affixed to this image, and kind of parallels what I felt when I woke up this morning after having that dream. So this is the card for today, and I'm going to go into the meditation. I'll pull some more cards after I finish, but at any rate, so that's what happened. So here we go. We're on day number 19, and it's May 26, 2025, and I call this the trip to America. I said in the last 3 days I've had 4 different dreams. The one I really wanted to talk about was the one I had last night. It was pretty intense and rather scary. And Metatron says, you had the dream for a reason. Through it, you were seeing just how dire the situation has become. And I said, I didn't really need to dream to see it. Metatron says, yes, you had this dream. I said, will this happen? And Metatron says, free will. Will you be traveling to the U.S. in the near future or in the coming years? I said, I have no plans to. And Metatron says, then don't. But tell me about the dream. I said, okay, I was in a car with my husband and we were traveling across Canada. Inadvertently, we ended up on a road that led to the U.S. border. Reaching it, we realized that we would have to cross the border into the U.S. The entire border was as I imagined in the east to West German border to have looked like back in the 1980s. It was a pretty scary image. Initially, I was afraid for my husband, but it wasn't him they were interested in detaining. It was me. Now, I know that dreams can be images of the past or future, but this literally left me chilled. I wonder if the things I have said in the past, although quite lame in comparison, might have something to do with the dream, or if I am simply seeing things as imagined by other people. I know one thing is clear. I do not want to go back there at all. And Metatron says the concepts of what you are seeing are the reality of life there. The intensity of all of that are pretty jarring to the casual observer, but it is something that must be discussed. The truth is, no one is really safe from this, and those who oppose the tyrant are at a greater risk of being suppressed. You saw this reality through your dream. The dream was as real image as seen by those who come to the U.S. by way of the Canadian border. It is for that reason that the people are attempting to avoid that border crossing. This does not mean that literally this has or will happen, but it does mean that the prospect of it are more serious than merely watching a movie play out. What you are witnessing is the playing out of history in real time. The fact that you have perceived it as the border between East and West Germany is actually not far off from the reality today. It is not only a means to keep foreign influence out of the country, but to also keep the American people inside. The meaning of the Constitution and the notion of freedom of speech are pretty much moot at this point. I am not trying to be a downer on you, but you wanted to know what the dream meant, and that is what it means. It means that for more freedoms will be taken away from U.S. citizens before things change for the better. Your concerns are valid. You are trying to become German as a way to protect yourself. I want you to know that it will happen. You will get your German citizenship, but you will be faced with a decision. Do you wish to remain an American citizen? I said, I don't think so. Not with the way things are at this moment. I don't like the way this is going. The dream felt very much like a confirmation of all the things I was most afraid of. Metatron says, but you have no reason to be afraid. You are in a safe place. I said, then why does my stomach feel so tight as we are discussing all of this? And he says, because you are empathic. You can feel things that most people cannot. You have an understanding of what a lot of people do not. Do you remember the story of Esther? I said, I recall it from a Touched by an Angel episode. I am not well versed in the Bible. I have a small understanding of it, but the Old Testament was pretty brutal. As I'm reading this, I'm getting chills. Metatron says, indeed it was. So Esther was a woman of Jewish faith who had to hide or conceal that part of herself to stay safe. You are someone who has always understood that you concealed your spiritual nature from others because of that judgment you had been subjected to. And you have also been subjected to people's harsh judgments of you because you had different ideals than they do. All of this are empathized in your dream. The fears of being made an example of because you will live abroad, the fear of not being able to see someone's pain because you are not in the thick of it. All of these things are parts of the same concerns that you have about going back. I said, are these grounded fears? And Metatron says, yes, they are, because you are seeing this happen to others. You understand the notion of what that person means. That poem means. They first came for the foreigners, they came for the intellectuals, and then they came for me. You understand history, therefore you understand what is happening. The banning of books, the denial of the truth, the suppression of knowledge, all of these things are happening. This is how people become brainwashed. They get told lies and untruths enough, and suddenly all of these things become their professed truths. I said, will the actions taken by the EU be enough to curtail some of this? And Metatron says, no, this will only happen when people from within teach the truth. You cannot prevent people who are like Anne Frank from speaking out. It will be unpopular for them to do so, but it will be imperative. I mentioned the story of Esther earlier. Now people from all walks of life will have to embody the spirit of Esther. The feminine energy will rise up, and that energy will fill the world. Does it not strike you as odd that they are only going after women? Women who sit as judges, women who are legislators? They are so afraid of the power of women. They know deep in their darkened hearts that women are the light, that women will rise up in numbers too large to ignore and will send their patriarchy to the dustbin of history where it belongs. This is why most of the women are viewed as the threat to them. I said, but why are some of the most dastardly of them women? And Metatron says, there are women with dark hearts, but those women of character are shining light on them and exposing them for what they truly are. Just because one is a woman does not mean that they are an enlightened individual. I said, it was like the Doctor Who episode I saw. I saw so much of it in what is going, that was a reflection of what is happening politically in the world. The doubters are those who oppose or do not trust those governing them, and the others are basically keeping their heads low. Metatron says, exactly. The writer of that story had a psychic flash. That is a story that was penned a couple of years ago, and yet it conveys a timeless theme and is a profound reflection of what is happening today. In keeping with this idea, the story will offer a profound sort of lesson to humanity. They must only understand how it is relevant and not only see it as a story on a science fiction show, but also show the relevance of how these events could lead humanity on a path of this kind, of the surrendering of one's destiny to the likes of an evil tyrant. As long as one person can recall their place in the world and accept that they are more than just a pawn in some individual's cruel game, then there is hope for the world. I said, that sounds pretty grim. And Metatron says, it is a lesson. It was presented to humanity in 1945. Now it is being shown a second time. It will continue until humanity gets it. The good news is the lesson has been learned by many people, and there are still those who have not yet grasped the idea that the evil is not in another person, but rather in themselves. To acknowledge your dark energies is to defeat them. You know and understand this. Now is the time to teach others that they too can do this as well. I said, there are those who refuse. And Metatron says, then their life will be the reflection of their ideologies. Those who expect positive results when all they do is infuse the negative will be sorely disappointed. That is where they are heading. Anyone who wishes for the bad on others will only see the negative energies fall back onto themselves. This is why the intuitive community says they do not wish the ill on someone else. They are merely reading the cards. I said, perhaps, but I still think the world would be better off without the evildoers. Does that make me a bad person? I want to see this evil defeated. If it means that the evildoers then transition, then so be it. And Metatron says, I see no harm in that. You want things to get better for the people. I said, yes. Is that what the dream was about? Is that what it meant? All of my fears and concerns coming up? Metatron says, yes. You have to see them for what they are and then let them go. Once you do that, then you can dance in the light. I said, don't tell me I will transition. Metatron says, to dance in the light does not mean transition. It means to find your own sense of peace and joy in living. Being able to do that will bring you a sense of humanity, or bring you a sense of harmony, that you have been denied. The dream is the one thing that now you have spoken of in detail. It can be released and you can move on as a light worker should. This is why you had the dream. You can let go of the fear, pursue the vision that you have for yourself, and not have to worry if the choices you make or decisions you undertake are the right ones. This will enable you to move forward in joy and, as I said earlier, to dance in the light. I said, thank you for the message. It was in part hard to hear, but it also gives me hope that the better days are coming. Metatron says sometimes you have to walk through the darkness before you reach the light. This does not mean that you are in the darkness, but when you think that darkness is all around you, look to the light. Always look to the light. It is there, and only there when you open your eyes, you will see it. And I said, I will remember that. Thank you. And that's where we ended. That was very intense. And that dream was a very, very massively intense dream. And I will say it straight up. I was a little bit worried about posting this. And I was a little bit worried about mentioning this dream because it feels too much like reality. And I don't like reality in my dreams that much. I don't like feeling like I'm seeing something that could happen. I just am not keen on that. So this was almost on a quasi nightmare to me. Just looking at it in this context of what I was seeing. But at any rate, so we get back to this. And this is the question of whether or not one is really willing to fight for what they believe in or fight for what's right. And the whole story of Esther kept just filtering through my mind about her hiding and trying to keep people from finding out that she had a faith that wasn't like theirs. And the one thing that happened was she ended up becoming a queen. So if I remember the story correctly, but at any rate, but this is where we are here. The next card I got is the High Priestess. And the High Priestess is that feminine energy, that beautiful, glorious feminine energy that's coming forth. And this is I think, what we have to fight with everything that's going on. We have this feminine energy that's coming forth, and it's telling us that we are the power, that we have the power within to overcome all of these obstacles and all of these things. And that's what I think she characterizes there. The middle card is strength, and that is self-explanatory. The feminine energy, the power of women, the strength of women, and the ability of women and the feminine energy to overcome all of this nonsense that's going on. We, as women, and most of the women and men who acknowledge the feminine energy within themselves, because we all have masculine and feminine energy. It's not just cut and dried. I'm a woman, therefore I have feminine energy, and my husband's a man, and therefore he has only masculine energy. I have masculine and feminine energy. He has masculine and feminine energy. And it's the embracing of that feminine energy that's going to give us the strength to overcome all of the things that are going on. That's how I interpret this. The next card is the Eight of Wands. And I have to sneak a peek in the book just to make sure that I get this right here. The Eight of Wands. I think this is coming through into the light and things getting better. But let me see. Eight of Wands. Oh, here we go. The Eight of Wands fly through the air, indicating speed over a fertile and lush countryside. If you've experienced setbacks or delays from the Eight of Wands, will be a welcome sight, for this card is being a swift-moving energy into play. With this card comes a sudden burst of activity and excitement. So, with us fighting and with us overcoming, we will have that burst of energy. We will come through. And here's the outcome, is the Seven of Wands. The Seven of Wands. Let me get the book here. Okay. The Seven of Wands. A man holding a swan defends his position against 6 others. The open doorway he appears to defend may represent his home, therefore he is defending his own ideals. His expression is one of great concentration, although he does not appear perturbed. Sevens show a completion of a cycle and can bring changes. So the outcome is change. The outcome is, even though we're going through a difficult time and we're contending with it, we have the feminine energy, the divine feminine that's coming in, giving us strength, sending us to the light, and then seeing us meet our goals to come through. That's how I read it. I think that this is us just seeing what we can be and what we can do. And I just looked at the base of the deck, and it's the Knight of Wands, which I've never pulled that card. Really interesting. He looks a little bit red. Let me see what the Knight of Wands says, because there may be a reason for that. Okay. The Knight of Wands sets out with confidence. He tends to bring swift movement into high level of energy. When representing a young man, the Knight of Wands is energetic, adventurous, full of ambitious ideas, warm and exciting, but apt to a little hasty. The Knight of Wands is almost always showed when someone is about to change residence. It may also signify a long journey being taken, sometimes both as in immigration. As always, look for supporting cards. The energy of the Knight tends to make clients feel they must act quickly, as it has a higher level of creative energy. But they must not, in their haste, forget to check the details first. So that's a pretty good indicator here. Don't rush in. What is it? Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Maybe that's the message here. Don't rush in too hastily with your ideals and your intentions. But do so with grace and dignity and kindness and compassion. And of course, this is for entertainment purposes only. So nobody, nobody's 100% perfect with these sorts of things and these sorts of videos. So just take it with a grain of salt. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I hope you have a great day and take care. And as always, namaste.